1.2 Merismatic Tissues and Growth. Have you observed the development of a plant from a seedling to an adult plant? Which part of the plant grows first? They are undifferentiated living tissues in plants which are responsible for plant growth. These tissues are known as meristematic tissues. Meristematic tissues is divided to two, namely apical meristems and lateral meristem. Apical meristem tissues are located at the tips of plant shoots and roots, whereas lateral meristem tissues consist of vascular cambium and cork cambium. The change in organism which start from the zygote stage to an adult is known as growth and development.
Zone of cell growth. The tips of shoots and roots can be divided into three zones of cell growth: zone of cell division, zone of cell elongation, zone of cell differentiation. The growth that happens in this zone is primary growth. This picture shows the zone of cell growth at the shoot tip, while this picture shows the zone of cell growth at the root tip.
The zones of cell growth. There are three zones of cell growth. First, zone of cell division. Second, zone of cell elongation. And third, zone of cell differentiation. Zone of cell division. It takes place at the apical meristems, which consist of actively dividing meristem cells through mitosis. The increase of the number of cells causes the elongation of the plant stem. When new cells are forming, the cells formed previously are pushed to the zone of elongation. In this figure of meristematic cells, the cell wall, nucleus, and cytoplasma are present. Number 2. Zone of cell elongation. It consists of cells that are increasing in size. The increase in size happens through water diffusion by osmosis and the absorption of nutrients into the cells and stored in the vacuoles. Small vacuoles fuse to form a large vacuole. This process is known as vacuolation. The diffused water exerts pressure against the cell wall, which pushes, elongates, and widens the cells. These pictures show small vacuoles that become enlarged vacuoles, and the small vacuoles combine to form a large vacuole. Zone of cell differentiation. It consists of differentiating cells that differentiate once they have reached their maximum size. Cells differentiate to form permanent tissue such as epidermis, cortex, xylem, and phloem. The cells change their shapes and structures to become specialized cells with specific functions. For example, epidermal cells in leaves differentiate and form gut cells that control the opening of stomach. Other than that, epidermal cells in roots differentiate and form root hair cells.
Types of growth in plants. There are two types of growth that occur in plants, namely primary growth and secondary growth. What is primary growth? Primary growth is the growth that occurs after germination, and it takes place in all plants to elongate their stems and roots. This growth takes place in the apical meristems at the shoot tips and root tips. Primary growth starts when the meristem cells in the zone of cell division of apical meristems are actively dividing. This is followed by elongation and differentiation of the cells. At the shoot tips, leaf primordia and shoot primordia will grow to form new leaves and shoots. This enables the plants to increase in height. What is secondary growth? Secondary growth occurs mainly in eudicots and a small number of monocots, which is shrub, to increase the circumference or diameter of plant stem and root. For non-woody plants such as herbaceous plants, secondary growth does not happen. Secondary growth results from the division of lateral meristem cells located in the stems and roots. Lateral meristems consist of vascular cambium and cork cambium. Vascular cambium is located between phloem and xylem tissues in vascular bundles, while cork cambium is located under the epidermal layer.
Secondary growth at the stem. The figure below shows the cell division at vascular cambium and cork cambium during secondary growth. The first phase, the secondary growth, starts when the vascular cambium divides actively through mitosis. Cells in the cambium ring divide inwards to form new xylem and outwards to form new phloem. The new xylem tissues become secondary xylem and the new phloem tissues become secondary phloem. Next, the third phase. When undergoing secondary growth, primary xylem is pushed towards the pith, whereas primary phloem is pushed towards the epidermis. As a result, the primary xylem tissues are compressed to form a stronger wood layer. This is because the wall of xylem are thickened with lignin. The thickening of lignin provides the mechanical support of plants. Last, when the secondary xylem layer is compressed, there is an addition to the circumference of the stem which causes the epidermis of the stem to stretch and crack. The cork cambium actively divides to form cork cells on the outer side and cortex on the inner side. The cork layer protects the stem from insect and pathogen attack when the epidermis is cracked.
Secondary growth at the root. The root of plants also undergoes secondary growth in order to increase the circumference of the root. The secondary growth process at the root is the same as the secondary growth of an eudicot stem. The figure shows the secondary growth at the root. Vascular cambium cells divide actively and combine to form a complete ring. The cells in the cambium ring divide inwards to form secondary xylem and outwards to form secondary phloem. Due to the vascular cambium activity, the root becomes thicker. The cork cambium located under the epidermis divides actively to form cork cells. The cork cells provide protection to the root tissues. Even though most monocots do not undergo secondary growth, some do, such as Dracaena species, Aloe species, and Agave species. The necessity of primary and secondary growth. The necessity of primary growth. First, allow maximum elongation of plants to absorb sunlight for photosynthesis. Second, primary folium can transport the product of photosynthesis from the leaf to other parts of the plant. Third, primary xylem can transport water and mineral salts from the soil via roots to the leaf. The necessity of secondary growth. First, provide mechanical support to plants. Second, produces more xylem folium tissues. Third, produces stronger and thicker bark to provide protection to the plants and excessive water loss, physical injuries, and pathogen infections.
comparison between primary growth and secondary growth in eukaryotes. First, we look at their similarities. Both growths can increase the size of the plant permanently. Second, both growths occur in woody plant. And third, both growths involve cell division by mitosis. Next, we look at their differences. First aspect is meristem tissue involved. For primary growth, it is apical meristem, and for secondary growth, it is lateral meristem, is vascular cambium and cork cambium. Second part of the plant that undergo growth. For primary, it occurs on stem and root in younger region of the plant. For secondary, occurs when primary growth has teeth and matured stem and root. Next, direction of growth. For primary, its growth occurs longitudinally, and for secondary, growth occurs radially. Next is growth effect. For primary, increase the length of stem and root of plant. For secondary growth, it is increase the thickness or circumference of stem and root of plant. Next is tissue and structure form. For primary, it is epidermis, cortex, and primary vascular tissue. And for secondary, it is bark, periderm. Next is presence of woody tissue. For primary, it is do not have woody tissue, and for secondary, it is have woody tissue. For their thickness, primary is thin and secondary is thick. And for presence of annual growth ring, primary is absent of annual growth ring, and secondary presence of annual growth ring at the plant stem.
Next, the economic importance of plants that have undergone secondary growth. Plants that have undergone secondary growth have high economic values because they can produce timbers such as Shorea sp and Balanocarpus sp. Plants that undergo secondary growth have strong and hard roots which are suitable to be used as structures for houseboat, furniture, fences, and doors. The woods and barks of some plants such as Hopia sp and Meranti can produce resin and oil. The substances can be commercialized as varnish, adhesive substance, perfume, and medicine. Flowering plants can be made as decorative plants. Commercialized fruits such as mangoes and mangosteen are products of plants that have undergone secondary growth, and they are able to generate income as well as boost economic growth.